Okay, so this gets into what's going on at present because since, I mean, in theory, the Chinese Communist Party has an explanation for all of the transplants that are happening now. And since 2015, that has been that the voluntary organ donation system has been growing very rapidly, and that this explains all of the transplant activity. Um, but if that explanation were to be found wanting, or in fact the data was made up, as we argue in this article, um, that would reopen the entire set of questions we've been discussing and that have characterized the period until 2015, which is where are the organs coming from? So our merely showing that the data was falsified doesn't, the voluntary numbers could have been more than they claimed. Um, and so we don't know what the numbers are based on this. But this paper shows, I think, fairly definitively that the numbers are falsified. So the reasons for this are, some of them are technical, but some of them are fairly straightforward. Susie, can you go to the next slide? So this is the centerpiece of the paper, but there are many other reasons. But here you see, so the circles, the stars, and the triangles, they're the actual data points. So we have data from 2010, which is the beginning of the pilot program for the voluntary system, until 2016, which is the last data point we had. And I think we finalized this paper in sometime in 2018. It was published in 2019. And when you fit a simple model or a simple formula called a quadratic formula to that data, it is an almost exact match. So 0.02% of the variation in the data cannot be explained by the model. So the data is almost identical to a very simple mathematical model. That's the first, discovery, and that raises questions. It doesn't mean that the data is fake based on that, but when compared to every other country, they're all very different. So China is a big outlier when conducting the same kind of test, like applying a simple model to transplant data over those years. China is very different. This is another set of data from the Red Cross, because there were two sources of data that the Chinese government claimed documented their voluntary donation system. And they were supposed to be identical because every transplant is registered in both. And so the Red Cross numbers were updated on a more regular basis. And we archived them daily because they just delete them. They publish a new data and there's no history. So we needed to archive them over quite a long time. And so these patterns jumped out where the data was being, we claim, was being altered, manipulated to conform to a certain ratio, which is on the next slide. But here you see, sorry, go back. Sorry, I don't have the slide. Anyway, the paper is online. But here you can see that in their official data, they're claiming that on certain days, there were this many transplants per donor. So that is, this many organs were taken per donor. In some cases, it was over a 2-week period. So you can see the spikes in C and then at A. And so because they were kind of tinkering with their data to make it conform to these properties, that is, they were claiming it was 2.75 organs per day. And you can see that they're on the dotted line. So they're always along that most of the time, except when they deviate from it because someone's not updating the data as carefully as they should. They kind of overcorrect and they end up putting these obviously fake numbers in their official data set. And so they're claiming for this period of time that they had done 20-something organs per donor, which is impossible, in order to force the data to be consistent with the pattern that they had apparently established. So there were 4 cases like this where the data was impossible. And this, we were only able to do this because we had been capturing it. Actually, Sophia Fung did that. She's is amazing. She logged in regularly and did that. I did some of it. We have it now automatically doing it. I have a script that runs every day and just does it. So we caught that, and there were a lot of other indicators. This is another one where the number of registered volunteers, that is, people who have agreed to donate their organs if they're in a car accident or they become, eligible donors, that exhibited suspicious patterns. It's not as obvious that this is entirely fabricated, but it is suspicious that at the end of the year, on 2 occasions, they, jack that number up very quickly. Whereas throughout the rest of the year, it was updated on a piecemeal basis. There are some potentially legitimate explanations for it, but when combined with all the other data fabrications and the kind of the pattern by which these local numbers were reported up, it starts to look very suspicious.